Quick update. I'm hoping the audio is better. I'm using my microphone like I used to. So here are the booster housings, both of them. Last time I had them filled in with either high build rattle can primer or auto body glaze. So the other day I shot them with a couple good heavy coats of Southern Polyurethane's epoxy primer. Yesterday I got out my 180 grit and went over and sanded everything just to make sure that it was a nice smooth surface. So you can see the surface is looking really good. Should look like a brand new booster when I'm done. I also shot it in here on the inside because this epoxy primer, once it's cured, it is almost impervious to chemicals and it'll keep the insides from rusting. Here's my fix for the pits. Again, it's JB Weld. I actually use a product called PC7, but they're both pretty much the same type of material. Again, pretty much impervious to chemicals, and there shouldn't be a lot of chemicals in these things as long as your engine's running well. So here we are. All right, everything's painted with the Southern Polyurethane epoxy primer in black. I brought it outside into the sunshine because the UV rays are what cures polyurethane. So about every 1 hour out here in the sun equals about 4 hours in the shop. So this is a way to accelerate how fast this dries. You really won't be able to do anything with it till tomorrow. It'll be semi-hard this evening, but if you push on it with your finger hard enough, you'll leave a fingerprint in it. But tomorrow morning, it'll be ready to go after sitting out here in the sun for 8 hours. There we go. It's looking good. Another quick update. I just wasn't happy with the finish. So one more day. I sanded it out with 400 grit, fixed a couple more little pinholes that I missed, and shot it with another good 2 coats of Southern Polyurethane epoxy. I'm done now. This is more than acceptable. So this will actually flatten out a little bit as it dries. It goes on nice and shiny, but once it dries, it'll turn into this nice satin black. All right, looks like rebuild tomorrow. While I let the paint dry on the housings, I may as well put together what I can here. So I've already cleaned up these plastic Bakelite power piston pieces with an alcohol-based wax and grease remover. A few things that I've read, some places it says don't use a solvent-based cleaner on this stuff, so I recommend just using the alcohol-based cleaner, or even just alcohol is probably fine. So the first thing I noticed is the original had the vacuum seal over the push rod from the pedal. It was a vacuum seal that went over, center sealed against the shaft. This outer piece here snaps over here, so that pulls out and snaps, and that's what gave you your vacuum seal. Then there was a dust boot that went over the top. The kit only comes with this, and it looks like they've effectively tried to merge the 2 pieces into one. So this one, the seal is only a small area down in here. That's way back down here, where this one is very deep. So the seal goes pretty much the entire length of the shaft. So first step, I think, would be to get this rubber boot stretched over here and installed. This here is the felt seal that goes around the power piston. You're supposed to soak it in vacuum oil, and it just so happens I have vacuum oil because I've got a vacuum pump for air conditioning, so I have that floating around. I have seen people use automatic transmission fluid. Up to you. I use what the factory manual says, so that's just soaking in there. A little bit, I'll take it out, lay it out on a piece of paper, and just let it drain out. All right, step one, we'll install our push rod. So we need to put a little lube in the hole. Push rod goes into that. And now I got to get it pushed down over here. It goes like this. I also put a little lube in the groove because I have to snap it over this as well. So let's start with this. Let me go grab a tool. If you've never seen one of these tools, it's probably one of the most handy things I've ever bought. It's a Snap-on SDD2. Who knows if they still make it, but what it's for is radiator hoses. Once you get the clamp off, you slide this into the radiator hose, work it around it to break it loose so you can pull the radiator hose. But I find a million uses for it. And now I can add rebuilding a booster. So you need to make sure you get that pushed all the way back so that it's behind the step. Yeah, looks like I'm going to have to get the outer put on first before that'll go all the way down. All right, and I should be able to push the center down. And there we go. It's actually not wanting to stay below the step. But, okay. We'll leave it there till I get her together and see if it, I guess really it probably just needs to float to wherever it wants to float. Okay. All right, so now this is that retaining ring steel that goes on the outside. New poppet valve. Interesting, this is aluminum now. The original kit, or the original was a steel backing with a rubber adhered to it. Just take your seal, just run a little grease on it just to lube it. pop it onto your rubber seal. Now you've got that all done. Make sure you got the backing ring. That just slides right in like that. Now comes, this is the other backing ring. The ridge goes up because the ridge is what keeps the spring from sliding around. That goes on there. I'm going to put a little lithium on it, just so it's got some lube. All right, small spring goes down inside. Large spring goes on that retainer. And this one's ready to go. Actually, before I put all that there together, we're going to put the outer seal. Need to get the outer seal sort of ready, because when this goes together, this pinches the seal and holds it all together. So there's half a dozen things you got to put together here. So I'll be back. So I've taken the felt out of the oil, let it drip dry a little bit. So now I need to install it into the finger ring. If you look at the end of it, you can see that it's a little bit taller than it is wide. And after thinking about it and staring at this a bit, I believe the right way to do this is the tall side goes up so that it pushes on the fingers and opens the fingers up. I kind of looked at it in the other housing, and this looks like the only way that it'll really fit well. So I'm going to leave this out here so that I can bring it back around and take the other piece of metal, end of the metal, and put it down here so that all the joints are not lined up in the same spot. And I'm going to have to go with the assumption that all this stuff's cut to the right length, and you actually want it to be a little snug like it is. It just kind of wants to just barely pop out a little bit. But I think that's actually good. To help give it a little tension. Now the one thing that's interesting is the old one had these little teeth on it as well. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out where they go, if there's a special place for those teeth. I see nothing different here, and I see nothing different here. So we're just going to put it on and I don't know, keep it away from the other stuff or the other joint, just for fun. All right, so there's that. So now we can go back and put in our plate, our two springs. And remember, we talked about this reaction thing down in here. You got to make sure you get it through the hole. And don't forget, there is an alignment here that you got to get right. for this crossover valve to bring the vacuum into the back. All right, so it's going to take a little work, I can see here. And there we go. You can see how this spring and felt put a pressure out onto the seal. Next thing is the reaction seal. Just a little bit of lube. That goes down in there. A little bit of lube on that. And there we go. But this will actually be able to be put in the very last, even with the cans around this thing. The hole in the can's big enough that this will go in. So, ready to roar. Now I just have to wait for the paint to dry. If you want to test it crudely, put the hose back on it, and you can blow into where the vacuum would go, and it should be sealed. And if you push this rod in, this is where your brake pedal connects. You push that in, and it only goes in a little bit, but you can actually open the poppet valve, and you'll be able to blow right through it. Success.